I've always been a planner, detail-oriented, meticulous, thinking 10 steps ahead. It's what made me successful in my career as an architect, and it's how I approached my marriage to Emma. For our 5th anniversary, I wanted something unforgettable, something that would remind her of the spontaneous, adventurous man she fell in love with before mortgage payments and career advancement took center stage. Emma and I met rock climbing in Colorado. We were both there with separate friend groups, both reaching for the same handhold on a particularly challenging route. Our fingers touched, eyes met, and that was it. One of those movie moments you never believe will happen to you until it does. On our first date, we talked about Greece, the whitewashed buildings of Santorini perched impossibly on volcanic cliffs, the crystal blue of the Aegean Sea. We promised each other we'd go someday. Someday became next year, then after the wedding, then when work settled down. Suddenly, 5 years had passed. So for our anniversary, I decided someday was now. I spent months planning it all. The perfect cliffside villa with a private infinity pool overlooking the caldera, sunset sailing, private wine tastings in ancient vineyards. I arranged for my firm to give me 3 weeks off, something practically unheard of, and surprised Emma with the tickets over dinner at our favorite restaurant. Greece? David, you didn't... Her eyes widened, that spark I'd been missing lighting up her entire face. She launched herself across the table, nearly knocking over our wine glasses to kiss me. The trip we always talked about. I can't believe you remembered. How could I forget? I smiled, relief washing over me. For months, something had felt off between us. Emma had been distant, distracted, always on her phone and working late. I'd begun to worry that we were drifting apart, becoming those couples who live parallel lives under the same roof. This trip was my Hail Mary pass to reconnect. For weeks after, Greece was all we talked about. Emma bought new summer dresses, a wide-brimmed hat for the Mediterranean sun, downloaded Greek language apps. She seemed present again, engaged. I thought I'd solved whatever had been wrong between us. Then, 3 days before our departure, I came home early from work with a bottle of champagne. I wanted to surprise Emma, start our celebration early, maybe cook her favorite pasta dish, watch the sunset from our balcony. But when I walked in, I heard her in our bedroom, her voice low and intense. I can't just drop everything because you're back, Nathan. I have a life here, a husband. My blood ran cold. Nathan, her college boyfriend, the one she insisted was ancient history, despite his occasional texts that she'd laugh off whenever I noticed them. It's complicated, she continued, her voice dropping even lower. We're leaving for Greece in 3 days, 3 weeks away. Yes, it's our anniversary trip. I should have walked in then, confronted her. Instead, I found myself frozen in our hallway, the champagne growing warm in my grip as I eavesdropped on my wife. Of course I still care about you, you know that. But David, he's my husband, Nathan. I made vows. I waited for her to say she loved me. That whatever Nathan was offering, she wasn't interested. That she couldn't wait for our trip. Instead, there was a long pause. I don't know what I'm going to do, she finally said. Let me think about it. I'll call you tomorrow. I quietly backed out of the apartment and walked around the block twice, the champagne still clutched in my hand like some sad prop. When I returned, making sure to slam the door loudly, Emma was in the kitchen chopping vegetables, her phone nowhere in sight. She greeted me with a smile that now seemed hollow. You're home early, she said, coming over to kiss me. Thought we could start celebrating a little early, I replied, holding up the champagne with a smile that felt painful on my face. How easily we lie to each other, I thought. How practiced we've become. That night we drank champagne and talked about Santorini sunsets, while my mind raced with questions. Who was Nathan to her now? An ex she couldn't let go of, or something more current? Had she been unfaithful, or was this an emotional affair? Did it matter? 2 days later, Emma canceled our trip. David, I'm so sorry, she said, tears in her eyes that I now questioned. Amanda's husband left her. She's a complete mess, and she needs me. I can't leave her alone for 3 weeks right now. Amanda, her best friend since college. The perfect alibi because, of course, I wouldn't begrudge Emma being there for her during such a difficult time. And I wouldn't have, if I hadn't heard that phone call, if Amanda hadn't posted Instagram stories all that week about her Healing Girls trip to her sister's lake house 3 states away. We'll reschedule, Emma promised, squeezing my hand. Maybe in the fall when things settle down, the weather will be even better then. I looked at my wife, this woman I'd shared a bed, a home, a life with for 5 years, and realized I was looking at a stranger. Of course, I said, nodding understandingly. Amanda needs you. The trip can wait. Emma looked relieved, like she'd expected an argument. You're the best, you know that? So understanding. I promise I'll make it up to you. I smiled and kissed her forehead. Don't worry about it. These things happen. What Emma didn't know, what she couldn't have guessed as she packed an overnight bag for Amanda's, was that I'd already made my decision. I would be going to Greece, alone. And I had no intention of coming back to this marriage built on lies. That night, after Emma left with her overnight bag and promises to call later, I sat alone in our apartment surrounded by the travel guides and Greek phrase books we'd accumulated. My first instinct had been rage, to confront her, to demand the truth, to call Nathan myself and tell him to stay away from my wife. But beneath the anger was something quieter and more final, clarity. I found myself opening her laptop. We knew each other's passwords. We'd never been the jealous, suspicious type. Or at least, I hadn't been, until now. I told myself I just needed confirmation before making any drastic decisions. What I found was worse than I'd imagined. Emma and Nathan hadn't just reconnected recently. Their emails went back nearly 2 years. Weekend meetings when she'd told me she was at yoga retreats or visiting her parents. Hotel receipts. Plans discussed and then canceled when I'd unexpectedly changed my schedule. I felt physically ill reading their exchanges. The intimacy, the inside jokes, the discussions about me and what to do about their situation. David's a good man, she'd written in one email. He doesn't deserve this. But when I'm with you, Nathan, it's like no time has passed. Like we were never apart. In another, I don't know how to leave him. Our lives are so intertwined. Sometimes I think I should just end things with you and try harder in my marriage. But then I see you and all my resolve disappears. The most recent exchanges revolved around our Greece trip. Nathan had apparently returned from working abroad and wanted Emma to meet him instead. They'd been arguing about it for weeks. He's been planning this for months, Emma had written. I can't just cancel on him without a good reason. Nathan's reply was curt. After 2 years of sneaking around, I think it's time to make a choice, Em. Him or me. I closed the laptop, my decision crystallized. The Emma I loved, the woman I thought I'd married, didn't exist. Perhaps she never had. I wasn't going to confront her, or fight for a marriage that had been a lie for nearly half its existence. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of seeing me broken, of being the understanding husband who forgives and tries to rebuild. No, I was going to disappear as completely as my legal obligations would allow. The next morning, I called my law school roommate, now a senior partner at his firm specializing in divorce. David, long time no talk. What's up? Mark's voice was cheerful. I need your help, I said flatly, and your discretion. For the next hour, I outlined what I'd discovered and what I planned to do. Mark listened without interruption, then sighed heavily. You've thought this through? No chance of reconciliation? None, I replied. I just need to know what I can legally do to protect myself while I'm gone. Mark walked me through the process, what documents to gather, what financial moves to make, how to legally separate our lives. But David, he cautioned, eventually you'll have to deal with this directly. Serve papers, divide assets, all of it. I know, I said. I just need some time first. Time away from her, from us, from this life we built on quicksand. Over the next 2 days, while Emma was supposedly with Amanda, I methodically prepared. I scanned important documents, transferred my half of our joint savings to a new private account, and packed a single suitcase with only what I truly needed. I drafted emails to my firm, explaining that I needed to extend my already approved vacation into a sabbatical for personal reasons, effective immediately. They weren't happy, but I'd built up enough goodwill over the years that they reluctantly agreed. Emma called each night, telling me about how Amanda was coping, asking what I'd had for dinner if I missed her. I played along, keeping my responses light and unaccusatory. Just watching the game, I'd say. The apartment feels empty without you. Small truths wrapped in larger deceptions. I was learning from the master. The morning I was set to leave, Emma texted, "Amanda's doing a bit better. Thinking of coming home tonight. Miss you." I stared at those words, "miss you," and felt nothing. Just 3 days ago, they would have warmed me. Now they were just pixels on a screen, as empty as our vows had been. I didn't reply immediately, letting her think I was busy at work. As I prepared to leave our apartment for the last time, I looked around at the life we'd built. The wedding photos on the wall, her reading glasses on the coffee table next to the novel she was halfway through, my architectural drawings spread across the dining table. 5 years of shared history, all of it tainted now. I placed my keys and wedding ring on the kitchen counter. Then, with one suitcase and a carry-on, I closed the door behind me. In my pocket was a one-way ticket to Santorini. In my heart was a strange mixture of grief and liberation. Just before boarding my flight, I sent Emma a single text. "Enjoy your time with Nathan. I've gone to Greece. Don't wait up." Then I turned off my phone, leaned back in my seat, and closed my eyes as the plane took off, carrying me away from the ruins of my marriage toward an uncertain future. The flight to Greece was long, nearly 15 hours, including connections through London. As the plane soared over the Atlantic, I sat motionless, staring at the blank screen in front of me while other passengers watched movies or slept. My mind was a pendulum swinging between numbness and acute pain. Memories of Emma kept surfacing, her laugh across the dinner table, the way she'd absently twist her hair when reading, how she'd reach for my hand in her sleep. Were any of those moments real? Or had she been thinking of Nathan even then? I'd turned my phone back on during my London layover to a barrage of texts and missed calls from Emma. They started confused, then panicked, then angry. "What are you talking about? Who's Nathan? David, answer your phone. You're scaring me. Where are you really? How long have you known? We need to talk about this. This is childish, David. Come home so we can work this out. I made a mistake, but you're overreacting. Please call me." The final text came just as I was about to board my connecting flight. "I love you, David. It's always been you. Nathan was a mistake. Please don't throw away our marriage." I turned the phone off again without responding and boarded my flight to Athens. Her words, "I love you," echoed hollowly. If she'd loved me, truly loved me, we wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be flying solo to what was supposed to be our anniversary celebration. She wouldn't have been meeting her ex-boyfriend for 2 years behind my back. Landing in Athens felt surreal. The bright Mediterranean sun, the signs in Greek and English, the crush of tourists, all of it exactly as I'd imagined when planning our trip, except I was alone. I caught my connecting flight to Santorini in a daze, and it wasn't until the island came into view from the airplane window that reality finally hit me. The stunning caldera, formed by one of the largest volcanic eruptions in recorded history, stretched below like a crescent moon, cradling the deep blue Aegean. Whitewashed buildings clung to the cliffs, stacked like sugar cubes against the harsh landscape. It was breathtaking. It was everything Emma and I had dreamed about together, and now it was just mine. The taxi drove me along winding roads to the villa I'd rented months ago, a private, luxurious space meant for romantic evenings watching the famous Santorini sunset. The property manager seemed surprised to see me alone, but said nothing as she showed me around, pointing out the infinity pool, the fully stocked kitchen, the bedroom with its king-sized bed draped in white linens. "Your wife will be joining you later?" she asked finally, unable to contain her curiosity. "No," I replied simply. "It's just me." She nodded, a flash of understanding in her eyes. "Sometimes solitude is the greatest luxury of all," she said kindly. "If you need anything, recommendations, reservations, just call the main office." After she left, I stood on the terrace overlooking the sea and felt the weight of my aloneness. Not loneliness, not yet, but the stark reality of being untethered from my life. No job to report to tomorrow, no wife expecting me home, no future planned beyond the next day. It was terrifying. It was exhilarating. I unpacked my single suitcase, hanging up the few clothes I'd brought in a closet designed for two. My phone remained off, charging on the nightstand. I wasn't ready to deal with the fallout yet. The inevitable calls from Emma's parents, from mutual friends wondering where I'd gone, from my own family when they realized something was wrong. Instead, I walked down to the small village nearby, found a taverna overlooking the caldera, and ordered a glass of local white wine. The waiter, noting my solitary state, brought extra bread and a small plate of olives on the house. "First time in Santorini?" he asked, his English heavily accented but clear. "Yes," I replied. "I've been dreaming about it for years." "Then you must watch sunset from here," he insisted. "Best view. I save you this table." I nodded gratefully and sipped my wine as the afternoon sun began its descent. Around me, couples and families chatted and laughed, taking photos and enjoying the view. I felt oddly disconnected from them, like I was watching a movie of other people's happiness. As the sun touched the horizon, painting the white buildings gold and the sea a fiery orange, I raised my glass in a silent toast. To what, I wasn't sure. The end of my marriage? The beginning of whatever came next? The simple fact that despite everything, I was here witnessing one of nature's most spectacular shows? A strange sense of peace washed over me with the fading light. Emma had betrayed me, lied to me, broken something fundamental between us. But she hadn't taken this moment from me. She hadn't diminished the beauty of this place or my ability to appreciate it. In that realization was a small seed of hope, not for reconciliation, but for my own future. If I could find peace in this sunset, perhaps I could rebuild a life worth living without her. I stayed until the stars emerged, brilliant and numerous in the clear island sky. When I finally returned to the villa, I sat by the infinity pool, with my feet dangling in the cool water, staring up at the constellations and wondering what Emma was doing now. Had she gone to Nathan for comfort? Was she still trying to call me? Was she worried or just angry that I'd disappeared? For the first time since discovering her betrayal, I allowed myself to really feel the loss, not just of my wife, but of the future we'd planned together, the children we'd talked about having, the home we were saving for, the growing old side by side. I put my face in my hands and finally let the tears come, my shoulders shaking with silent sobs that only the Santorini night witnessed. When I had no tears left, I straightened up and took a deep breath of the salt-tinged air. Tomorrow would be my first full day in Greece, my first day of whatever life came after Emma. I had no idea what that looked like yet, but at least I would face it honestly, without the lies that had defined my marriage for too long. I turned my phone on just long enough to send a brief email to Mark, my lawyer friend. "I'm safe, proceeding as discussed. We'll contact you in a few days to move forward." Then I turned it off again and went to bed alone in the king-sized bed meant for two, sleeping better than I had in months. Days in Santorini fell into an unexpected rhythm. I woke early, swimming in the infinity pool as the sun rose over the sea. I'd make coffee in the villa's kitchen, then walk down the steep steps to the village for fresh bread and fruit. The locals began to recognize me, the solitary American who sat at the same taverna each evening with a book and a glass of wine, watching the sunset. Costas, the waiter who'd first welcomed me, eventually asked the question that must have been on his mind since I arrived. "The villa you stay in, it's usually for honeymooners, but you are alone. Heart trouble? His direct question, asked with genuine compassion, caught me off guard. Something like that, I admitted. My wife, she's with someone else now. He clicked his tongue sympathetically. Her loss, he declared, with such conviction that I couldn't help but smile. Santorini has magic. It heals broken hearts. You wait and see. I wasn't sure about magic, but there was something therapeutic about the island's harsh beauty. The volcanic cliffs, the relentless sun, the ancient ruins testifying to civilizations that had risen and fallen long before my problems existed. It put my pain in perspective. On my 5th day, I finally turned my phone back on properly. The barrage was immediate. 47 missed calls, over 100 text messages, dozens of emails. Emma, her parents, my parents, mutual friends. The narrative had apparently evolved from David's gone to Greece alone to David's had some kind of breakdown. I ignored most of it, only calling my parents to assure them I was physically safe and emotionally coping. I'll explain everything when I'm ready, I promised my concerned mother. But this isn't a breakdown. It's the clearest my head has been in years. I also emailed my firm, confirming my sabbatical and recommending which colleagues could take over my current projects. Work had been my anchor for so long, the one place where I felt completely in control and respected. Stepping away from it was perhaps the most radical act of my quiet rebellion. Then, steeling myself, I read Emma's most recent messages. I've moved out temporarily to give you space. I'm staying with my sister. I've spoken with a counselor. I understand why I did what I did, even though it was wrong. We can fix this. Nathan is out of the picture completely. It's over. It was never serious like what we have. Please, David. 5 years of marriage has to be worth at least a conversation. Her words stirred nothing in me. No rage, no sadness, not even disappointment anymore. Just a dull recognition that this person, once the center of my world, had become a stranger to me. I composed a brief, factual reply. I'm processing what's happened and what it means for our future. I need this time alone. I've retained legal counsel and will be in touch through proper channels when I'm ready to discuss next steps. Please respect my space. After sending it, I blocked her number. It felt both cruel and necessary, like cauterizing a wound. That evening, Costas introduced me to his cousin Eleni, who owned a small boat rental business catering to tourists. She needs someone who speaks good English to help with American customers, he explained. Just for high season. Good money, time on the water, better than sitting alone thinking sad thoughts. The offer caught me by surprise. I hadn't considered working during my time here, but suddenly it seemed perfect. Structure without pressure, human connection without emotional entanglement, a reason to get out of my head. I don't know the first thing about boats, I admitted. Eleni, a sun-weathered woman in her 40s with intelligent eyes, laughed. The captains know boats. You just need to know people. Book reservations, explain safety, make Americans feel comfortable. You can do this, yes? I found myself nodding. Yes, I think I can. The next morning, I showed up at Eleni's small office by the old port. She spent an hour showing me her booking system, explaining the different tour options, introducing me to the 2 captains who operated her boats. By lunchtime, I'd booked my first group, a family from Chicago celebrating their daughter's graduation. The work was straightforward but satisfying. I greeted tourists, matched them with the right tour for their interests, occasionally joined the trips when they needed an extra hand. Days passed, then weeks. My skin darkened under the Mediterranean sun. My shoulders, once perpetually tense from hunching over architectural drawings, relaxed. I found myself laughing with strangers, sharing meals with Costas and his extended family, sleeping dreamlessly through the night. One morning, about a month into my stay, I woke with the sudden realization that I hadn't thought about Emma once the previous day. Not when I woke, not when I worked, not even when I watched the sunset that had become my daily ritual. The pain hadn't disappeared entirely, but it had receded to a manageable ache, rather than the consuming agony of those first days. That same morning I called Mark. "The prodigal architect returns," he joked when he heard my voice. "I was starting to wonder if you'd decided to become a Greek citizen." "Not quite," I replied, "but I am ready to move forward with the divorce." Mark's tone turned serious. "She's been calling me, you know, every week like clockwork. Wants to know where you are, if you're coming back, if you've filed papers yet. And what do you tell her? That I'll represent you when you're ready, but I don't know your plans. Client confidentiality." He paused. "She seems genuinely remorseful, David." "I'm sure she is," I said, surprised at how little that mattered to me now. "But remorse doesn't rebuild trust. And without trust, what's the point?" Mark sighed. "No argument here. I'll draw up the papers. Standard dissolution of marriage, equitable division of assets. Anything specific you want?" I thought about our apartment, our bank accounts, the life we'd built. None of it seemed important anymore. "Just make it fair," I said finally. "I don't want a legal battle. I just want to be free." After hanging up, I walked down to the edge of the caldera and stared out at the vast blue expanse of the Aegean. For the first time since arriving in Santorini, I allowed myself to think about the future beyond the next day or week. Would I return to the States, resume my architectural career, stay here and build a simpler life? I didn't have answers yet, but the questions no longer filled me with dread. Whatever came next would be authentically mine, built on truth rather than illusion. That seemed like enough of a foundation for now. The divorce papers arrived via international courier on a brilliantly sunny Tuesday, 2 months after I'd fled to Santorini. I signed them at the small desk in my villa, my hand steady, my mind clear. It felt less like an ending than a formal acknowledgement of what had already occurred, the death of a marriage that had been terminal for longer than I'd realized. I'd moved from the expensive honeymoon villa to a modest apartment in the village, using my earnings from working with Eleni to cover rent. My sabbatical from the architecture firm had evolved into a resignation, a decision that had come easily once I recognized how much lighter I felt, without the constant pressure of deadlines and client expectations. "You're really not coming back, are you?" Mark had asked during our last call. "Not to that life," I confirmed. "I'll return to the States eventually to sell my half of the apartment and tie up loose ends. But no, I'm not coming back to Emma or to my old firm." "You don't think you're running away?" he pressed, the concern of an old friend evident in his voice. I considered the question seriously before answering. "I ran away that first day," I admitted. "But now, I'm running toward something, even if I'm not entirely sure what it is yet." After sending the signed papers back, I walked down to the small beach below the village. Unlike Santorini's famous black and red beaches, this was a humble stretch of pebbled shore where locals gathered in the evenings. I'd begun swimming there daily, pushing myself further each time, until I could complete a circuit around the small bay without stopping. As I dove into the cool water, I thought about the man I'd been just months ago, successful by conventional standards, but disconnected from myself, trusting blindly in a relationship that had been corrupted by lies. That man seemed like a stranger now. Swimming hard against the current, I felt gratitude wash over me alongside the salt spray. Gratitude for the pain that had forced me to change course, for the strangers turned friends who had welcomed me into their community, for the daily beauty of this island that had somehow become home. When I returned to shore, Eleni was waiting, a serious expression on her usually smiling face. "Dimitri is leaving," she said without preamble, referring to her senior boat captain. "His mother in Athens is sick. He must go care for her." "I'm sorry to hear that," I replied, toweling off. "Will you hire someone new?" She looked at me appraisingly. "You have learned much these months. The tourists like you. You understand the boats now." I laughed, surprised. "Are you offering me Dimitri's job? I'm not qualified to captain a tour boat. You are architect, yes? Good with details, with making things that do not fall down. The rest you can learn." She shrugged as if it were already decided. Better salary, year-round work, not just tourist season. You think about it. As she walked away, I stood dripping on the shore, stunned by the unexpected offer. Captain David, taking tourists around the caldera, explaining the volcanic history of the island, pointing out the best spots for photographs. It was so far from the career I'd spent years building that it should have seemed absurd. Instead, it felt like possibility. That evening, as I sat at my usual table at the taverna watching the sunset, Costas brought an unopened bottle of wine to my table along with a wrapped package. "Special day?" I asked, puzzled. "You tell me," he replied enigmatically. "Open." The package contained a leather-bound journal with my name embossed on the cover. Inside, on the first page, Costas had written in careful English, "For new stories." I looked up at him, touched and confused. "Thank you, but what's the occasion?" He pointed to the date on his watch. 1 year ago today, when you booked the villa. Eleni checked reservation records when you first came. You plan to arrive today with your wife, yes? For anniversary? I stared at him, the realization hitting me like a physical blow. Today would have been the day Emma and I arrived in Santorini if everything had gone according to my original plan. In all the chaos and rebuilding, I'd completely lost track of the date. Today would have been our 6th wedding anniversary, I said quietly. Costas nodded solemnly, then broke into a wide smile. Instead, "It is the anniversary of your new life. Better, I think. This calls for celebration, not sadness." He gestured to the wine. "From my family's small vineyard. Very good. You share with friends." As if on cue, Eleni appeared, along with several other locals I'd come to know over the months. The baker who saved me the best loaves, the elderly man who taught me to play backgammon, the young artist who'd painted a small watercolor of the caldera for my apartment. They pulled up chairs, produced glasses, and before I knew it, an impromptu party had formed around my sunset table. We drank Costas's wine and shared a feast of grilled fish, fresh bread, olives, and sweet baklava. They told stories in their mix of Greek and English, teasing me about my early days on the island when I'd been so obviously lost and broken. I found myself laughing more freely than I had in years, surrounded by people who knew only the man I was becoming, not the man I'd left behind. As night fell and stars emerged above the Aegean, Eleni raised her glass. "To David," she said simply, "who came to Santorini looking for an ending but found a beginning instead." The toast moved me more than I could express. These people owed me nothing, yet they had gathered to help me mark this strange anniversary with joy rather than regret. In their kindness was the answer to the question I'd been avoiding. What came next? "I'll take the captain's job," I told Eleni impulsively. Her eyes sparkled with triumph. "I knew this already. Why you think I bring good wine?" Later that night, slightly drunk on wine and acceptance, I sat on my small balcony with the leather journal Costas had given me. I opened to the first blank page and began to write. A year ago, I thought I knew exactly what my life would be. I had a 5-year plan, a 15-year plan, a retirement plan. What I didn't have was honesty, from my wife or perhaps from myself. When Emma canceled our trip to stay with her ex, she unknowingly set me free from a marriage built on deception, free from a career that demanded everything but returned too little, free from the constraints of who I thought I should be. I came to Santorini alone, thinking it was an ending. Instead, it became the beginning of something I never planned but now can't imagine living without. I don't know if I'll stay here forever. I don't know if I'll captain boats for the rest of my life, or if architecture will call me back in some new form. I don't know if I'll ever trust enough to love again. But for the first time in my adult life, I'm at peace with not knowing, with letting the current take me where it will, strong enough now to swim back to shore if needed. Emma, wherever you are tonight, I hope you've found your own peace. And I hope you understand why I had to leave. Why I went alone to the place we dreamed of together, why I won't be coming back. Some journeys can only be made alone. I closed the journal and looked up at the star-filled sky. Whatever pain had brought me here had served its purpose. Tomorrow I would begin training with Dmitri to learn the intricacies of captaining a tour boat. Next week Mark would finalize my divorce. Next month I'd fly back briefly to sell my share of the apartment and collect the few possessions that still mattered to me. And after that was unwritten, and for once in my life, that felt exactly right. I raised my glass to the night sky in a final toast, not to endings or beginnings, but to the journey itself, with all its unexpected turns and hidden harbors waiting to be discovered. The wife who canceled our trip for her ex would never know how her betrayal had ultimately set me free. She would never see the man I was becoming on this volcanic island halfway around the world. She would never understand that by breaking my heart, she had inadvertently helped me find my soul. And somehow, that seemed like the perfect epilogue to our story.